Hello students, welcome to Shri classes. We'll begin with a new chapter, chapter number 7, Control and Coordination from Biology. Chapter flow. This entire chapter has been divided into two parts: control and coordination in human beings and control and coordination in plants. So, we look into these two aspects. First of all, what do you understand by control and coordination? In your textbook, the control and coordination has been explained with some examples in the beginning of the chapter. So let us see some photographs and see whether we can interpret what exactly is the meaning of control and coordination. Here, these are some of the pictures where in this cat is running. Probably it is looking for a rat. The children are playing on the swings. Here, a person, when he is seeing the sunlight, he is closing eyes and also bringing his hands above his eyes to protect the eyes. Here a person is catching, a fielder is catching a ball. A lady is picking up the required items and putting it into the baskets. Here it is a slow cycling where the one who slowly rides, the last person who crosses the mark would be the winner. What is that do you conclude from all this? There is a movement here of the cat, the movement of the children, movement of the hands here, movement of the eyes here, movement of the hands, movement of the legs and movement of the eyes, movement of the hands and movement of the eyes. Here, movement of legs, hands, eyes. So, what do you understand by control and coordination here? In order to pick up a right item, first eyes should be able to detect what is that we require. The hands should move to that particular item and the item needs to be picked up and put back into the basket. So there is definitely control over the hands. Can you expect an item to be picked up from the rack and put onto the floor? Can you be able to put it onto the floor, or can you be able to put it to the bins of the baskets of the others? No, you will put into your basket only. No, that means you should have a very good control over the movements of the hands. Then where is the coordination? Eyes are there. Eyes will be continuously monitoring and guiding the hands to pick up the certain item and then put into the basket. So there exists a coordination between eyes and the hands. One is the movement, we have a good control, and there is a coordination between the eyes and the hands. Here also, fielder would be able to catch the ball provided there is a very good control over the movements of the legs, movement of the hands and the movement of the eyeballs, and if there exists a very good coordination between legs, hands and eyes. Only in that case a fielder would be able to catch. Cat would be able to run in the direction of the rat. Only in that case cat would be able to catch the rat. So based on these examples, I can conclude that all the movements produced by, or all the visible movements over here, are the results of the change in the external environment. The change in the external environment can be considered to be a stimulus and the movements as a response. at the advantage or to protect the bodies. So there exists a very good control over the movements and coordination between different organs, and hence we are studying the control and coordination. External environment can be a stimulus over here, and in general we respond to the change in the environment. The change in the environment can be a very good stimulus, and the response could be in terms of the movements of the hands, movement of the legs, movement of the body parts, and that will be to our advantage or it is to protect the body. So this is how the control and coordination is required. Very good control and coordination is required for the body. See, one more thing here. This slow cycling. Where else do you expect the control and coordination? A control is required over the movements of the legs, movements of the hands, movements of the eyes, and a very good coordination is required. If the hands are not listening, then it is not possible to achieve the slow cycling, and therefore a control as well as coordination, control over the movements of the body parts and coordination between the different movements is what is essential. Out of all this, one point which I could talk about is visible movements of life can be associated as a response to a change in the environment of the organism, and each movement is carefully controlled. All these movements are very carefully controlled, and there exists a coordination between the movements of different body parts. Extra change in the external environment is considered a stimulus, and the body movements are considered as the response to that stimulus. Okay, nothing to be noted down, only just to understand what is control and coordination. These are the examples. We'll go to the next one. Now, even though the title says animals' nervous system, we are studying the nervous system in human beings. First of all, how is the control and coordination in human beings achieved? There are two systems by which control and coordination can be achieved in human beings. One is the nervous system and second is the hormonal system. Nervous system, the communication in the nervous system, the communication is established by means of electrical impulses. The communication between different body parts are established by means of electrical impulses, whereas in hormonal system, the communication between different organs or different body parts is established by means of a chemical messengers called hormones. So a secretion of the hormones, particular hormone, would lead to the target sites, target cells or target organs. It will reach the target organs and the growth of a particular target organ takes place. And this is how the development of the body also takes place. So there also the control and coordination is definitely required. For example, if growth hormone is released to the extent that which is not required, in that case the gigantism could be the result. And therefore important thing is hormonal system is also one of the systems out of these two that establishes the control and coordination in human beings, and that is by means of chemical messengers. Hormones are also named as chemical messengers. So these are the two systems by which control and coordination takes place. In the beginning, we'll study about the nervous system. What is the nervous system in our next slide. First, let us understand the classification of the nervous system. The entire nerve, see here, these two diagrams talk about the distribution of the nerves in the human body. In this diagram, you can see brain and the spinal cord. In this diagram, you can see a network of nerves that are connected to the spinal cord and the brain here. So all these are the nerves present in the hands, nerves present in the legs, abdominal region, on either side of the spinal cord, chest region, etc., neck region, etc. This network of nerves is classified as one particular part, and only the brain and the spinal cord is also classified as one particular part of the nervous system. So nervous system mainly two parts: central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord only. Peripheral nervous system consists of all nerves excluding the brain and the spinal cord. Is it clear? All nerves or that part of the nervous system excluding brain and spinal cord is termed as peripheral nervous system. I can put this statement in other way also. Peripheral nervous system is the nervous system composing nerves that emerge out of the brains and the nerves that emerge out of the spinal cord. So, peripheral nervous system helps in communication between different body parts and the central nervous system. These nerves join the different body parts to the spinal cord and also to the brain. And thus, the communication between different body parts and the central nervous system, that is brain and spinal cord, is established by means of peripheral nervous system. Is it clear? The main classification. Okay. Under this peripheral nervous system, we have another two categories: autonomic nervous system, somatic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system, it controls the involuntary actions. Somatic nervous system controls the voluntary actions. In autonomic nervous system, again we have two divisions: sympathetic and parasympathetic. And in somatic nervous system, you have sensory nervous system and motor nervous system. Afferent and efferent. Afferent refers to the sensory part and efferent refers to the motor part. What are these sensory, motor? We'll see later. But for the time being, understand the terminologies of the classification of nervous system. Mainly, nervous system is divided into CNS and PNS. Central nervous system, CNS consisting of brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system, which is the nervous system consisting of the nerves that emerge from the brain and the spinal cord, which is divided into autonomic nervous system, somatic nervous system. Autonomic in sympathetic and parasympathetic, and somatic nervous system is divided into sensory nervous system and motor nervous system. So note down this classification. More or less, everyone follows the similar classification of the nervous system. If you go much in detail, there are too many components inside, which is not at all required. Even the textbook doesn't discuss much about all these things other than central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Note it down. Here another diagram I have given. This is how you can see the whole body is full of nerves, and also there is a brain and spinal cord. Brain and spinal cord forms the central nervous system, and rest of the nervous system forms the peripheral nervous system, which is given over here. You can study different parts. All these parts are not required to be studied. Only for your information, you can have a look at the slide if you want individually what are these things and all. No explanation is required for this. Okay. Next. Yeah, here some descriptions has been given, and this is to be noted down. So this you have understood classification of the nervous system, CNS, PNS, and PNS is again divided into two systems, we know. Let us see what are these things. Central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord, and what is that they do? Gathering of the information from different parts of the body, integrate the information, think over, and then take a suitable action, which means to establish the control and coordination, isn't it? So central nervous part plays a very important role in establishing the control and coordination between different parts of the body. So consists of brain and spinal cord. They gather information from all parts of the body and integrate to provide suitable control and coordination. That is the main function of the central nervous system. Peripheral nervous system. It consists of nerves that branch out of the brain and that branch out of the spinal cord. The communication between CNS and other parts of the body is facilitated by PNS. That means peripheral nervous system helps in establishing the communication between the central nervous system and different parts of the body. See, there are totally 43 pairs of nerves in the PNS, which have been divided into cranial nerves and spinal nerves. There are 12 pairs cranial nerves and 31 pairs spinal nerves. Put together, you have 43 pairs of nerves. What are those cranial nerves? 12 pairs that arise from the brain, okay, only from the brain, and which are connected to different parts of the head, eyes, ears, tongue, etc. So, 12 pairs that arise from the brain and connect eyes, mouth, ears and other parts of the head. Those are called cranial nerves. Next, spinal nerves. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves which emerge from different regions of the spinal cord to different parts of the body. For example, few pairs emerge from the neck region. That means from the spinal cord into the neck region, the nerves will get distributed. Abdominal region, chest region, hip region. This is how different number of pairs of nerves emerge from the spinal cord and they establish the connection with all different body parts. Some details have been given. This paragraph no need to remember, but it is interesting to see here 31 pairs arising from the spinal cord and connect different parts of the body. How do they connect? 8 pairs arise from the neck region and connect the neck parts. Neck region. 12 pairs they arise from the chest region, 5 pairs from the abdominal region, 5 pairs from the hip region and 1 pair in the coccyx region. Coccyx is the last bone of the vertebral column. Here, how to pronounce this COCCYX, coccyx. Coccyx, small triangular bone at the base of the spine, for which 1 pair of nerve is connected. So all put together, different 8 pairs, 12 pairs, 5 pairs, 5 pairs and 1 pair. These are the number of pairs the number of pairs of nerves that emerge out of the spinal cord and establish the connections with different body parts in order to facilitate the communication. So better if you note it down. I think all these are the points to be noted down. Make a good notes of this. Fine, we'll go to the next one. Again, the peripheral nervous system has been divided into somatic and autonomic nervous system. Soma means body. So somatic nervous system refers to that nervous system which controls our body parts. So it is associated with voluntary control of the body movements. Important, somatic nervous system is associated with voluntary movements of the body parts. Also, it controls involuntary reflex actions. What is reflex action? We'll define later, but somatic nervous system is responsible for control of involuntary body movement, voluntary body movements. That means the movements of the body parts at our will, voluntary body movements, and also it controls involuntary reflex action. Whereas autonomic nervous system refers to that system which controls involuntary movements of body parts. Involuntary movements, that is internal organs and glands movements, is controlled by autonomic nervous system, which is further divided into sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system, which these two nervous systems, the functions of these two nervous systems are opposite to each other but help each other, complementary to each other. Even though the functions are opposite in nature, those are complementary to each other in order to establish a good balance in the body parts, or good balance of the body, I can say. So sympathetic nervous system, let's what exactly, let us see the sympathetic nervous system. It increases the heartbeat, it increases the rate of respiration, it is responsible for dilation of the pupil becomes bigger in the eye, and relaxation of the urinary bladder. These are the examples you must remember. In case a question comes, what is sympathetic and parasympathetic? Probably these examples help us to illustrate the system, sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So, if the sympathetic nervous system is responsible for increasing the heartbeat, parasympathetic nervous system decreases the rate of heartbeat. If this increases rate of respiration, parasympathetic decreases the rate of respiration. So, which are opposite in nature, but which is definitely required. For example, suddenly if a tiger comes and stands in front of us, definitely the rate of heartbeat increases. But you cannot live with that increased heartbeat continuously. Something is required to reduce the heartbeat after some time, no? And that is how parasympathetic nervous system helps in establishing the balance by once again decreasing the rate of heartbeat. So some more examples have been given with respect to sympathetic and parasympathetic. In general, sympathetic nervous system basically it accelerates, it is the one that accelerates the actions, and parasympathetic is the one that breaks the activities, or provides breaks for the actions. Some more examples. Sympathetic dilates pupils, parasympathetic constricts pupils. Sympathetic inhibits salivation, parasympathetic promotes salivation. Relaxation of the bronchi is caused by the sympathetic system. Parasympathetic system contracts the bronchi. And here another one, inhibits bladder contraction. Sympathetic system relaxes the bladder, whereas parasympathetic contracts the bladder. These are few of the examples which I think you need to remember. So note down these things, and if you are interested to note down a couple of these comparisons of sympathetic and parasympathetic with respect to the functions, you can note down these things. Yeah, I think this is the classification of the nervous system which we have understood. Let us see next part. Yeah, now some more insight into the nervous system. How do you define a nervous system? First of all, a nervous system is a nervous tissue which consists of neurons, and that facilitate the transmission of signals from one body parts to another body parts. So what is a nervous system? It is a system comprising of nervous tissue which consists of a large network of nerve cells or neurons, and it is specialized in transmitting or conducting information through electrical impulses from one part of the body to another body part. So what are the keywords in defining the nervous system? First of all, it is a nervous tissue. The system of nervous tissue, it is a system of nervous tissue consisting of a large network, also you can say, or consisting of a network of neurons, and that is specialized for conducting information in the form of electrical impulses from one part of the body to another part of the body. So good definition, you have to note it down. What are the functions of nervous system? Here you can see at the bottom diagram, response of nervous system. What is the response of a nervous system to the external stimulus? And also, of course, to control the internal movements of internal glands and all, which are involuntary actions. So, response of the nervous system is to control the voluntary actions, to control involuntary actions, and to control reflex actions. These are the three main functions of nervous system. So, what are the three main functions? To control the voluntary functions, to control involuntary functions, and to control reflex actions is reflex action. These are the three main functions of nervous system, which have been given here a little bit differently, but same. Controls and coordinates voluntary muscular activities, controls and coordinates involuntary actions also, you can say, and controls the reflex actions of our body and protects it, and also enables us to, additional point, think, reason and remember. These are the functions of nervous system. And some more important points, couple of points have been given. What is that? Let me see. The nervous system uses electrical impulses to transmit messages. It is quite clear. The nervous system gets information from our sense organs and acts through our muscles. We'll study what are these sense organs and what are the muscles that provide actions of the movements of the body parts, which are called effectors. So this part we'll see later. Note down these things and also this table. Yeah. Next is, we studied earlier what was a nervous system. Now what is a nervous tissue? There itself we defined a nervous tissue comprises of a network of nerve cells or neurons, isn't it? So a nervous tissue is made up of an organized network of nerve cells or neurons, and it is specialized, this tissue is specialized for conducting information through electrical impulses from one body part to another body part. So note down this definition also. Now about the receptors and effectors, which is you can expect a question in the exams. What are receptors and what are effectors? Receptors are specialized nerve cells. What is the function? Receptors gather information. Receptors gather information. So, receptors are a group of nerve cells present in the sense organs. Where these are located? In the sense organs. Having a specialized tips. Specialized tip means here we talk about specialized dendritic tips. What is dendrite? We'll see that later. So receptors are a group of nerve cells present in the sense organs having specialized tips to detect a particular stimulus and initiate the transmission of the impulses via sensory neurons. A good definition. So these receptors are specially some kind of nerve cells which are present in our sense organs. What are the sense organs? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue and skin. These are the 5 sense organs, panchendriyas, which we call. All these sense organs contain special nerve cells called receptors. What is their function? To gather the information or to sense the stimulus and send those stimulus to the brain. That is their function. That means in the form of electrical impulses. Receptors which are present in the sense organs detect a particular stimulus, they sense a particular stimulus and initiate the transmission of impulses, nerve impulses via sensory neurons. So there are different names given for different receptors present in different sense organs. In eyes, the receptors are called photoreceptors that are sensitive to the light, or they sense light. Here, eyes Receptors present in the eyes are called photoreceptors. They sense light. Receptors present in the ears are called phonoreceptors. They sense sound. Olfactory receptors are present in the nose. Their job is to sense smell. Gustatory receptors, receptors present in the tongue, are called gustatory receptors that taste the food. Receptors present in the skin are called thigmoreceptors or thermoreceptors. What is their function? They sense the touch and also they sense hotness and coldness, and therefore these thigmoreceptors are also called thermoreceptors, isn't it? The degree of hotness and coldness is sensed by thermoreceptors or thigmoreceptors present in the skin. So different sense organs, the names of the receptors present in those sense organs, and they are sensitive to these stimuli. Okay, so note down this paragraph also, this table also. So we have understood receptors are special nerve cells present in the sense organs. Okay, and what is their duty? What is their job? They gather the stimulus and send the nerve impulse via sensory neurons. What are effectors? These effectors are muscles. All this, in the hands you have muscles, legs you have muscles. What is that causes the movements of the hands and the legs? Contraction and relaxation of the skeletal muscles lead to the movements of different body parts. And what is that initiates the contraction and relaxation of the muscles? Effectors, not effectors. The nerve cells which take the information from the brain, and those nerve cells which are joined to these muscles initiate the contraction and relaxation of the muscles. So what are effectors? The muscles basically that are attached to the cells, the movement of which causes the body parts movement, are called effectors. Or the definition here it's given is quite good. Effectors are the muscles that receive information from the motor neurons and cause the movements as a response to the stimulus. A quite good definition. Once again I'll read. Effectors are the muscles that receive information through motor neurons and cause the movements as a response to the stimulus. What are motor neurons? We'll see later. But for the time being, note down this definition of effectors. You are going to get a question on what are receptors and what are effectors. Okay. Fine. I think we'll go to the next slide. Note down all these contents. See about the types of neurons: sensory neuron, motor neuron, and relay neuron. There are three types which we'll study later, but first we'll study the structure of the neuron and then we'll study the types of neurons. Okay, so motor neurons, relay neurons, and sensory neurons are the three kinds which we'll study later. But next we'll go to the structure of the neuron or a nerve cell. This is how a neuron looks like. Neuron is also called a nerve cell, but structure is different from other cells. For example, you must have seen the muscle cells which are elongated and tapered at the ends. Sperms, head and tail. Eggs, approximately spherical shape, and RBCs, concave cells, isn't it? A disc shaped cells. So different cells are of different size and different shapes, and this is how a nerve cell looks like. Let us understand the parts of this nerve cell. This central portion over here, mainly this is called a cell body, or it is also called cyton. Nucleus at the center, and there is a cytoplasm surrounding the nucleus, and different cell organelles are present inside the cytoplasm. There are some projections over here. These projections which emerge out of the cell body are called dendrites. From the cell body, one long fiber, a long thread-like structure goes here, and this long thread-like structure or a fiber is called axon. The ends of these axons are called axon terminals. These are the ends here, and these ends are called axon terminals. And finally here you have synapse. Synapse is the gap between axon terminal and dendrite of next nerve cell. Got it? Synapse is a gap between axon terminal nerve ending of one nerve cell and the dendritic tip of another nerve cell. Because these are to be joined, no? Next nerve cell will have a dendrite at these tips, and this is how the network continues. Next you have this axon, which is a long fiber. It has an insulated sheath called myelin sheath. It is insulated. This myelin sheath is formed by some particular cells called Schwann cells. The myelin sheath, it is not a continuous sheath. There are constrictions or breaks at certain regions at different points, and these breaks, here you can see this one, this one, this one, and this one. These breaks or the constrictions on the myelin sheath are called nodes of Ranvier. So these are the different body parts of the nerve cell: cyton, cell body, dendrites, nucleus, axon, myelin sheath, Schwann cells, nodes of Ranvier, axon terminals, which are also called nerve endings, and synapse, a small gap between the nerve ending of one neuron and the dendrite of the next neuron. So these are different parts of the nerve cell. Quite simple, and you have to practice this diagram, important thing, because sometimes you will be asked to enumerate those parts whose functions will be given to you. Are you able to understand? See, mark that part on the nerve cell which gathers information. Identify and mark a part that transmits, that is the longest part in the neuron, that is the axon. The one which receives information are called dendrites. So what I am saying is, you will be given indirectly the function. Based on the function, you have to identify suitable parts, and those parts are to be named by drawing a particular diagram. So hence you practice this diagram and note down all these components. Okay. Yes, here whatever we discussed in brief, a small note is given which is important to be noted. The functions have been explained here. So what is the structure of the nerve or a neuron here? The basic structural and functional unit of a nervous tissue is called a nerve cell or a neuron. What is a neuron? That is the question. So, it is the basic structural unit and also the functional unit of a nervous tissue. Neuron is the largest cell in your body. Sometimes it goes up to 1 meter long. Single cell but very long. Neurons carry messages in the form of electrical impulses. Yes, we know about that. And neuron consists of following parts. A brief description of the parts is given here. Cell body or cyton. It is a typical cell similar to all cells basically, containing nucleus and cytoplasm. Around the nucleus, Nissel's granules are present. See, around the nucleus, all cell organelles are present, just like other cells. I am specifically mentioning about Nissel's granules here because a few years back there was a question which used to talk about Nissel's granules. I don't know the function of this. Probably I can tell in the next class. Let's see. But there was a question where Nissel's granules are present. So Nissel's granules are present in the cell body around the nucleus is what you can see. So that's what I have given. And dendrites, they are short and branched structures. Yes, here it is defined. How do these dendrites look like? Those are the short and branched structures connected to the cell body. Dendrites receive information, physical, chemical, mechanical or electrical, any kind of information. They receive information and pass on to the cell body. So dendrites basically they collect information and that information is passed on to the cell body. But one important thing here, that is the next sentence. See, the information acquired at the dendritic tip of a nerve cell sets off a chemical reaction that creates an electrical impulse in the dendrite. So, electrical impulse is created in the dendrite. When a dendrite receives an information, that information sets off a particular chemical reaction and a chemical reaction generates electrical impulse and that will be transmitted to the cyton. Next is axon. It is the longest part of the neuron. Also it is called axon fiber. It conducts electrical impulses away from the cell body, very important. And Schwann cells wrap around the axon membrane to form the myelin sheath. See, these Schwann cells which form the myelin sheath forms an insulated layer over the axon fiber so that there is no leakage of electrical impulses. Electrical impulses are transmitted at their full strength and those are not weakened. What a beautiful system. It provides a very good insulation in the form of myelin sheath. And another important point I said, axon transmits signals away from the cell body, whereas dendrites transmit signals towards the cell body. That is one distinction, point of distinction. Okay. Next comes nodes of Ranvier. That is function and all is not required. These are the constrictions on the myelin sheath. Nodes of Ranvier are the constrictions on the myelin sheath. Axon endings or the nerve endings, these are the end terminals or end points of axon. And synapse, it is the junction. Yeah, it is good. This is how it is defined. It is the junction between two adjacent nerve cells, axon ending of one cell and dendrite of next cell, isn't it? So it is a junction between two nerve cells, axon ending of one cell and dendrite of another cell. The junction between those two is called a synapse. See, synapse is a very small gap. Why it is required? That is required for transmission of signal by chemical means. Synapse is required for transmission of signals by chemical means. You got it? We'll study next slide how this transmission takes place. But synapse is a small gap that exists between two nerve cells, between the nerve endings of one cell and the dendritic tip of the next cell. Okay. So All these points are important according to me, and you have to note it down. Okay. I hope you have noted down in brief. Some more information that is given in the textbook needs to be noted down. This particular junction, this is called a neuromuscular junction. This is a neuromuscular junction, the junction between neuron and the muscle. This is the junction, means it is a junction between motor neuron and muscle fiber. What is motor neuron we will see here, but for the timing you understand motor neuron and muscle. This junction is enlarged here, and this is how it looks like. So neuromuscular junction is the junction between motor neuron and effector muscle or muscle fiber. It is a junction between motor neuron and muscle. Motor neurons receive the instructions from the brain and they stimulate the muscles. Contraction and relaxation of the muscles take place, by which the movement of the limbs or the different body parts take place. So this is a neuromuscular junction. Here it is given, this particular junction: axon, muscle fiber, capillary, blood capillaries, etc. So nerve impulse. Also, what is a nerve impulse? Simple question will come. The information in the form of chemical and electrical signals passing through the neurons is called a nerve impulse. You cannot say that a nerve impulse is only an electrical impulse. See, definitely the transmission of the signals is in the form of electrical impulses, but thing is, here the conversion from one signal to another signal, electrical to chemical, is taking place, and therefore the nerve impulse is a combination of chemical, or I can say it is an electrochemical signal. I can put like this also. Nerve impulse is an electrochemical signal that gets transmitted through the neuron. That also I can say. Or it is the information. Nerve impulse is the information in the form of chemical and electrical signals passing through the neurons. Okay. Here it's interesting. These three very important. What are the different types of neurons? We understood nerve cells, nervous tissue, nerve cell, and what are the different types of nerves here? Mainly there are three types: sensory nerve cells or neurons, motor neurons, and mixed relay neurons. What are these sensory neurons? Sensory neurons carry information from sense organs to the central nervous system, that is brain. Which example can you give it here? For example, seeing. Whenever we see the object, the information of seeing a particular object reaches the brain through a particular nerves or neurons, and those neurons are termed as sensory neurons. The information is carried from the sense organs to the brain by these neurons. Motor neurons. Motor neurons are the neurons that carry information from brain to the muscles. Okay, central nervous system to the effectors. Yeah, this is the best way to put. Motor neurons are the neurons that carry information from central nervous system to the effectors. What are effectors? Those are the muscles which receives the information and they provide the movement as a response to the stimulus. Okay, so motor neurons, they carry information from the central nervous system to the effectors. Sensory neurons, they carry information from sense organs to the central nervous system. Okay, we'll talk from sense organs to the central nervous system. By sensory neurons, the information is carried, and from central nervous systems to the effectors, the information is carried by motor neurons. What are mixed relays? Very interesting. These mixed relay neurons are present in the modulators, and those are responsible for reflex actions. Very important. These are the connecting neurons, short circuiting neurons. Transfer information between sensory neurons and motor neurons directly. The brain will not come into picture at all. So relay neurons are a set of neurons. समझिए यहाँ पे one set is a neuron, a sensory neuron, and another is a motor neuron. If those two are there, sense organs to the brain via sensory neurons, information is transmitted from brain or central nervous system, I can say. From central nervous system to the muscles through motor neurons, the information is transmitted. This relay neurons or a mixed relay neurons are the shortcut neurons or short circuiting neurons. What do? They directly transfer information from sensory neurons to the motor neurons and just give one information to the brain that I have transmitted the information. That kind of neurons are called relay neurons or a mixed relay neurons. Okay, so these are the three important types of neurons which you must know it. So note it down. You go to the next slide now. Yeah, very important information. I think I could have pasted here the neuron in order to explain this function. But anyway, I hope you are familiar with the terminology of the neurons, and we'll see how the information transmission is carried through neurons. The transmission of information through neurons, these 3 points are taken from the textbook. You will get a question for 2 marks. 2 marks question, 3 points. These 3 points very clearly explain how the information is transmitted through the nerve cell. So I'll read this first and then explain. It is better, point by point. This information, not this, you can see the information. Okay, the information acquired at the end of the dendritic tip of a nerve cell sets off a chemical reaction that creates an electric impulse. This impulse travels from dendrite to the cell body and then along the axon to its end, that is axon end. At the end of the axon, the electrical impulse sets off the release of some chemicals. These chemicals cross the gap called synapse and start a similar electrical impulse in a dendrite of the next neuron. This is a general scheme of how the nervous impulses travel in the body. How is this? Is it not very clear? Beautifully explained in your textbook how the information is transmitted through nerve cells. In brief, the information that is gathered at the dendritic tip, say for example jasmine smell, the receptors, specialized nerve cells are located in nose. What are those called? Olfactory receptors. Those receptors have a specialized dendritic tips to accumulate or gather or sense the smell. So the information gathered at the dendritic tip sets off a chemical reaction, and that chemical reaction generates an electrical impulse. That electrical impulse travels to the cell body and through the axon reaches the nerve ending or axon terminal. At the end, the electrical impulse sets off releasing of a particular chemical. at the end of the axon, the electrical impulse sets off the release of some chemicals, the release of a chemical. That chemical again passes through the synapse, which is a small gap, to the next dendritic tip. There it initiates a chemical reaction, chemical plus chemical reaction. That chemical reaction generates an electrical signal. Further it is transmitted, and this is the general scheme of the flow of nervous impulse or nerve impulse, which is in the form of electrochemical signal throughout the body. So the transmission of nerve impulse is accomplished by these 3 points. Very important, note it down. I hope you have understood what is it. So आप लोग ये 2-3 बार पढ़िए एक बार, then you will really understand. Okay, fine. Next, reflex actions. We will talk about this also. It's a very small thing. Yeah, we'll see what is reflex action. First, definition of a reflex action. Thing is, whenever we touch the hot plates or hot objects, suddenly we pull back our hands. This is the best example for a reflex action. Here, what is that is making our response so fast that the brain doesn't know that action has been taken. By the time brain knows that it is hot, already the action has been taken. Which is that action? Pulling off the hand out of the hot plate. So this is called a reflex action. How do you define this reflex action? Keywords and phrases are very important in defining the reflex action. How it is defined? Sudden, unconscious, involuntary response is a reflex action. समझ में आ रहा है? Sudden, unconscious, involuntary response to a stimulus is called a reflex action, which is monitored through the spinal cord. See, the reflex actions are not monitored by the brain. These are monitored by the spinal cord, something called a modulator, in which the relay neurons act like a short-circuiting neuron between the sensory neurons and motor neurons. The signals will take a shortcut. You understood? From sensory neurons to the relay neurons and to the motor neurons. Motor neurons will instruct the effectors, which are muscles, to take a particular action, and one information from the relay neurons goes back to the brain saying mission accomplished. This is what the relay neurons do there. Okay, so we defined reflex action. Most important definition is important. Example, we suddenly withdraw our hand if we suddenly touch a hot plate. Closing eyes when bright light falls on the eyes. Sneezing when we see the sun in the daylight. Knee jerks. Withdraw hands when pricked by a pin. Choking stimulates cough reflex. Lot of smoke is there, then cough is a reflex due to choking. Withdraw hand or leg when it touches to an hot object, most common example of a reflex action. And women knitting a sweater while watching a TV, it is also a reflex action, but it is called conditioned reflex action. It is a conditioned reflex action. Can you give me another example of a conditioned reflex action? Talking over a mobile and driving a car, isn't it? Definitely, you will reach your home, or you are riding a bicycle, and if you are talking over a mobile, and if you are going to your house, definitely you will reach your house despite talking with your friend or a girlfriend in a mobile. That is the conditioned reflex. Okay, that's one of the examples. So what is the mechanism of reflex action? I'll read this very clearly explained. What is the mechanism for this reflex action? These few points explain how the reflex action in total takes place. Let's see. Mechanism of reflex action. First point, receptor organ perceives stimulus and creates a sensory nerve impulse. Receptor gathers the information. That's the first point. The receptor gathers the information and it creates a sensory impulse. The sensory neurons carry this impulse to the spinal cord. You got it? The sensory impulse is then transmitted to the spinal cord. The spinal cord acts as a modulator. Very important. These are all textbook sentences. The spinal cord acts as a modulator and transmits sensory nerve impulse to motor neurons via relay neurons and also sends a signal to the brain about the happening. Okay, and motor neurons conduct impulse to the effector muscles such as leg muscles or hand muscles to create a necessary movements of the body to protect from the harmful stimulus. So how this happens is basically, suppose there is a hot plate. If we touch the hot plate, what receptors are present in the skin? Thigmoreceptors, or these are also called thermoreceptors. They receive the information and create a nervous impulse. The nervous impulse travels through the sensory neurons to the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, the relay neurons transmit that information from sensory neurons to the motor neurons immediately. Also, the relay neurons give an information to the brain that already the information is given to the motor neurons and mission accomplished. The motor neurons carry the information to the effector muscles. What are effector muscles? Muscles attached to the skeletons of hands, legs are called effector muscles. So motor neurons carry information to the effectors. Effectors initiate the movements. Effector cause the movements of the body parts as a response to the stimulus, which was a hot plate. So this is how the mechanism of reflex action takes place. Once again, very quickly, receptors will gather information and the electrical impulse is generated. It is transmitted through the sensory neurons to the spinal cord. The relay neurons will transfer that signals from sensory neurons to the the motor neurons. Motor neurons will transmit those signals directly to the effectors. Effectors are the muscles, and the muscles contract or relax to cause the necessary movements in the form of response to the stimulus, which caused sensory receptors to generate an electrical impulse. So this is how the reflex action takes place. So this is a mechanism, and generally about 2 marks question can appear, that is, explain the mechanism of a reflex action. This basically explains the pathway through which an electrical impulse is carried. This explains the pathway through which the electrical impulse is carried. Okay, fine. What are the advantages of reflex action? 2 important advantages. It enables a quick response to harmful stimulus and protects the body. Suppose if the information has to go to the brain, and then the information has to come from the brain to the effector muscles via motor neurons, then it takes time. By the time the instructions go to the brain and then back from brain to the effector muscles to cause the movements, as it takes time, one would have got hurt by burning or by pricking of a pin, etc. And therefore, the quick response is ensured by the reflex action. So what are the nerves that come into picture for the reflex action? Sensory neurons, relay neurons, and motor neurons. Very important. Okay, fine. What are the advantages? First, we understood it enables a quick response to the harmful stimulus and protects our body parts. Second, minimizes the overloading of the brain. Yes. See, sometimes brain will be doing a lot of things. Do you think only reflex action is what it has to take care? Apart from reflex action, brain has to control our heart, brain has to control our breathing process, digestion process, sleep process, this, that. Brain is totally occupied, whether voluntary or involuntary actions. All those are controlled by the brain. So overloading of the brain, especially during such emergencies. Okay, emergencies. So overloading is prevented. Overloading of the brain is prevented. These are the two advantages. Enables quick response to the harmful stimulus and protects the body, and minimizes the overloading of the brain are the two main advantages of reflex action. Okay, next. I think you better make a note here. Note down all these points. Yeah, next. Yeah, reflex arc. Let us define what is the reflex arc. The pathway taken by the stimulus to travel from receptor organ to the effector organ is called a reflex arc. Definition comes for 1 mark question. It is a 1 mark question. Define reflex arc. The pathway through which a stimulus travels from receptor to the effector is called the reflex arc. So reflex arc is a pathway through which the stimulus travels from receptor to the effector. Reflex arcs are formed in spinal cord itself, although the information input goes on to reach the brain. So as I said, here it is a hot plate. This is the steam basically. The moment hand comes in contact with the high temperature of the steam, he or she will be able to withdraw hands. That is because this is a temperature, high temperature is a stimulus. The stimulus travels through the sensory neurons, reaches the spinal cord, and this is a modulator. In this modulator, this is a mixed relay or a relay neuron. This takes a shortcut here. It directly transmits information from sensory neuron to the motor neuron, which are connected to the effectors, and the action of pulling back of the hand takes place. Now, this relay neuron also sends one information to the brain saying that mission accomplished, meaning ये hand को हम लोग पीछे ले लिया और hand is protected करके. So one information also goes that. So definition of a reflex arc and what actually happens during the reflex action, how the brain receives information is what it is given. So a diagram आप practice करिए, important. Many times you will be asked to draw a reflex arc. It is better if you can draw the same diagram. What is given here? Receptors, heat or a pain can be a receptor here. Receptors in the skin, sensory neurons, relay neuron, motor neuron, effector, muscle in the arm, and the pulling of the response basically. Last one is the response, that is pulling of the hands. And message to the brain from here, modulator. ठीक है, note down this. Yeah, here yeah, fine. This is the last slide which you are going to see. Draw a flowchart for a reflex arc. Simple flowchart. If you know the reflex action, flowchart also is a simple one. How is this done? Stimulus, here we will study first and then you can go to this diagram. They both are same. Stimulus, sense organ which contains the receptor, then the sensory information is transmitted through sensory neuron to the spinal cord, which is a part of the CNS. From spinal cord to the relay neuron. Relay neuron, the information is carried to the motor neuron. Motor neuron is connected to the effector muscles and initiates the actions of the effector muscles in terms of contraction or relaxation, and thereby the response in the form of movements of the body takes place. So stimulus, sense organ, sensory neuron, spinal cord, relay neuron, motor neuron, effector neuron, response. This is the flowchart of the travel of stimulus, the travel of stimulus from sense organ, that is receptor, to the effector, and this is called a flowchart of reflex arc. Here also hot plate generates a stimulus, receptor skin, then the stimulus travels from receptors to the spinal cord via sensory neurons. In the spinal cord, the relay neuron conducts the information or carries the stimulus from sensory neurons to the motor neurons. Motor neurons are connected to the effectors and effectors are activated pulling, pushing or the body movements is the response of the effectors in order to protect the body parts. So, hot plate stimulus, receptor skin, sensory neurons, spinal cord. Here you should write relay neurons present in the spinal cord. This acts as a modulator here. So, it is better to write here relay neurons to motor neurons to the effectors like muscles, where the effectors create a response. One more block also you can write as a response. Here there is a stimulus here, and here you can write one more block and write this as a response. Response is nothing but the movement of the body parts. So note down this reflex arc also. So we have completed the first part over here up to reflex action, and make a good notes of all these points. We have covered a lot of out of the chapter parts here, but I feel all this information is required because in most of the schools all these things are dealt with, and therefore it is better to make a solid notes out of this. If you do not write and simply if you refer to some PDF and all, you will not be able to remember. Make the notes in your own handwriting so that at least once in the whole this 1 year you will be able to write it, and writing makes you to remember also. And writing should not become a conditioned reflex. Make sure that you understand and write. It should not become a conductive reflex, mechanical thing. So note down. We'll end the lecture over here and see you in the next lecture. Thank you for watching.